Okay, let's get started.
Yeah,
Glad
hi
to have you,
everyone.
Artur. We have probably a few minutes for people to log in, so if you want to maybe just say a few words to introduce yourself, go ahead.
Hey folks, I'm Artur, one of the co-founders of Softr, and I'm responsible for everything tech. And today with Guillaume, we're going to do a live build.
Really cool. And can you remind a bit, so when was, we have people tuning in, when was Softr created? Can you remind a bit the context of Softr, how many people or businesses build with the tool?
Like you mean when it was created initially, like the first
When it
version
started,
of Softr?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think about 4.5, 5 years ago. Obviously, very simpler version than what we have today. Today it's like a superpower. And as of now, we have like more than 1 million builders building applications on Softr. So it's pretty huge at the moment.
That's amazing. And maybe a few, I joined Softr in September. I was closely looking at and using the platform even before. How would you describe what happened in 2025? Like, it feels like when you logged in to Softr in January versus in December at the end of the year, like a lot has changed. How would you summarize the year in a few words?
Yeah, I think 2025 was like the year where Softr became like full stack. Before that, it had a lot of powerful features, but it was relying a lot to leverage external data sources like Airtable, Google Sheet, and Smart Suite, and HubSpot, etc. So along the way that we added more data sources, we realized that a lot of people come without having data somewhere already, and they had to create an account in external systems, like learn new systems, etc. And that was a clear signal that it's time also to build our own database. Also, external databases became slow over time, no secret there. So we wanted to build more scalable, faster database solution. And this is where we created Softr database, and similar story with workflows. Like we had integration from early on with Zapier, Make, previously Integromat. They are cool, like very solid systems, but we always had this issue of that it always runs in the background and there's no feedback loop between the application and those systems, and people had to create a lot of custom coding to glue things together. And with Softr workflows that we introduced also last year, it just became full stack, like databases, application layer, workflows, and everything seamlessly talks to each other. Like you have the UI triggers, right? So you can even show a wait screen and decide on actions that will happen once the workflow is run and so on. Those might sound like details, but they actually change the entire UX of your application.
Absolutely. Like from the moment the automation is not just from your database, when something happens, then something gets enriched or formatted. Right now, it's really being triggered by an interaction in the app, and yeah, that changes everything. Thank you for this summary. Today we'll be building something live, and we have prepared like a business use case. So I'll be eventually sharing my screen like a canvas, so we can maybe prepare a bit what we have in mind. The context, and hello everyone. I see many people are joining. Hi Julien. Hi Marina. Hello everyone. We want to be building an app that basically takes your meeting transcript, so everything that has been discussed in a meeting, and turn that into tasks that you can actually plan to work on. So we'll maybe try to map that. We have meeting transcripts coming in, and then we want an AI analysis that will extract task 1, task 2, etc. And ideally, we have users in our app, and the task can be assigned to the right people, because I think, in a meeting transcript, we also get the information about who told what, or who got assigned what kind of tasks. So we can have AI analyze the transcript, and create those tasks, assign them to the right people. And from there, we want a second part of the app, where we could be, maybe as a logged in user, you see your own task, but you could also drag and drop them to place them on your calendar, to know when you to plan when you want to work on them. How does that sound, Artur?
Sounds great. Let's start.
So the last part is drag and drop to a calendar. And this is actually something extra custom, right? To drag and drop events or tasks on a calendar. So I think we will not find a native block to do that, and we'll be using the vibe coding block so we can exactly explain what we want. So that's a very high level plan, but I think we can dive into it. Do you want to take the part where we build that form that captures the transcript? You want to take that part?
Let's do that. So let me go to that app.
Yeah, perfect. So we have prepared.
We have a form. Should I use this one?
We can. I'll just share your screen. Okay. So this is almost an empty app that we've just prepared. And
the basic pages,
and can we start by showing the database that we have prepared already, so we have an idea of what the data looks like?
Yes. So we have users, a couple of users, just demo users. As every business app needs users, so we have them, and then we have meetings. So this is what form we'll be submitting, and the transcript will come here. So this is just a demo that Guillaume has created. And these meetings will be first captured here, if I understood it correctly, Guillaume, and then workflow will run and it will create tasks. And then you'll be able to drag and drop in a custom calendar, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, starting with the database is probably one of the best ways to, once you have a good overview of what you want to build, I think nailing the structure of the database is a crucial part. Do you have what are some tips you could give also as you're a very technical person? How would you recommend to define what's the ideal database for your project?
Yeah, so I usually try to keep them as small as possible. So many times from customers during troubleshooting, we realize they have tables with 100+ fields.
Okay.
I understand that sometimes it might be necessity to do it, but most of the time, if you don't need really, try to split it into multiple tables. Also, try to think about what's your primary field. Here we have email, which is unique in this context, which makes sense, obviously. And then for others, when we have the meeting, title might work fine. I personally, from the technical standpoint, usually prefer to, create ID fields here. I'm not going to do it for this exercise, but usually I would add record ID.
Yeah.
And then, use the formula, or actually we do have a field as well.
We do have one, which is convenient.
Record ID. So we have a shortcut for that. So I many times prefer to use record IDs because the titles, they could have spaces and some characters. They are not the best for primary fields. But again, it works also if it's concise and title could work. I just technically prefer having IDs as a primary fields. So this is just one small tip. If that makes sense for you, you can also apply that.
Perfect. So one table per object, right? Here we have users, we have meetings, we have tasks. they are all distinct objects, right? The task is not a meeting, but it can be like the outcome of one of the meetings. So that's why we'll be able to have multiple tasks related to one meeting.
Yeah.
Using this field, right?
We also need to sometimes think about our relationship, which I think most people ignore, or they just get what's default. So, for example, the task could be, correct me if I'm wrong, but one task should be belonging to only one meeting, right? Or can it be like the task comes from multiple meetings? If it's one to like many or many to one, I would make sure that I actually capture it correctly. So in this context, for example, if you tell me that the task only belongs to a meeting, then I would actually make this as a single, not aligned to link to the multiple ones.
Yeah. And in our context, so how to know about that? There are actually two options. Like we could also have a system where if we have a next meeting where we rediscuss one task, we could actually have our AI workflow kind of update the documentation of an existing task. So of course, a lot of options here, and it's really about what do we want to achieve. So I think, right now we can keep it like this. And should we then create that form to capture the transcript of
the meetings, right?
Meeting? Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, then let's do that. Let's go back to the interfaces. So we have the default form that comes from the default application. Let's just perhaps use that one. We connect to the tasks and meetings. So then we go into steps, and some of those obviously don't make sense. Let me quickly check again what are the fields here. So we have title, we have transcript. We are going to pass only the transcript, I guess, right? The title will be generated based on
I think I usually prefer to, like in the form, it's already a manual task to fill in the form, so we can actually identify the fields that actually can be deducted from other fields, and I would say that the title could be AI written, and then we can allow to manually edit it if they actually want to, change it a bit. So we can do it that way. Maybe for the dates, it's not sure that every transcript contains the date, so we can maybe make it one of the fields.
So the first section, then it's just a title. And then the second one, we have message here. This is a text area, which is good for transcript. So we'll map this to the transcript field.
I guess will be, like whatever tool we use, either like Google Meet transcripts, or we'll just copy and paste the whole transcript, and then the AI will do the work for us, right?
Yeah, we can customize this further, but I guess it's not very important for this exercise. And you wanted to add the date as well?
Yeah, let's do that. Perfect.
And I think we don't... How do I disable the time, or is it actually from the database that we need to disable? Is database date?
Input type, you can go for
date, exactly.
Because right now we'll just capture the actual day this happened. I think that will be enough.
While we're building, I have actually a lot of ideas what to improve. Like new small improvements, because I think this could have been like automatically decided that it's date and not data time if the database field is date only.
So we can expect this to be shipped in the coming weeks.
Label is date, and I guess that's it here. And then we need to pass it to the workflow. So first it's going to be saved inside the database. How do we want to do it? Do we want to just try it first without workflow and then attach a workflow?
Let's try it out. We can preview this app. And something I can do on my end is maybe also connect our users to the table. Actually, we can do it live.
Yeah, so let's take today's date, submit data. So we got the test one going, which is already great. And so then we are back here and steps, and then we want to add ending, right?
Yeah, so we could either, select the workflow as a destination or as a form ending. Here it's convenient that the destination is the data source. So whatever, like whenever there is a submission to that form, it creates a record, as we have just seen, but we'll add an extra aspect to that, which will be, as you have created here, it will run a custom workflow whenever we hit submit. And that's actually the AI automation that we'll create now.
Yeah, so now we will create workflow, and this is a special type of workflow because this is going to be connected to your like form, and it has the UI connection to the UI of the application. That's why we have the convenience to create directly from here, and we'll create and just go into the workflows.
Perfect, and that's very new. Like it's been a month or two that it's available, and it's. I mean, we'll see how it works, but it really helps to create the next steps after this workflow. Like this form is being submitted, we can, for example, send the user to a different page based on the submission, etc. So that's where we are building these logics.
Yeah, and as some of you might have experienced already, but for new joiners, this is a UI, and the way, in a way, you get like, show await screen, and you can actually end the interaction in a certain way. So those are those kind of features that you usually would be missing when connecting to a third-party workflow engine, because they wouldn't be nicely integrated with any app builder. So here, as it is Softr workflows, then we have the luxury of connecting those together.
Yeah,
so here we have
I was used to build some workarounds with the webhooks and then the custom code for a waiting screen. And right now it's really built in, and you have this loading screen that will basically make the user wait until all the actions that you put in between proceed.
So let's then continue. Let's try testing this. No record found, because I think steps are here. We need to go to the app and then preview again and send one more test, and then we'll be able to test it here. Although the team is working to improve it so that we don't have to necessarily do this step of preview, submit, and then come back to testing. So we'll improve the experience here to make it more seamless.
That's good to know. Yeah.
So then I guess I need to go and do that, right?
Yeah, we can preview it again, submit another form.
Wait a second, I will go here. Oh, this is good, it's selected. Let's preview. Yeah, those are the things that I mentioned that we are going to improve. Now it needs to be on so that it starts to capture the workflow. Let me just go to the workflows.
That's also quite new to have the workflows being available here. So now if we test the trigger, we should
No, I think I still need to go back and execute it from preview. Yeah, now it went through the workflow. You have also seen the wait screen, right? And now when I go here and do testing, I get the record here. So we have the form data here, and we also, we have in two modes, right? The form data is passed to the workflow as well as we have the record coming from the destination data source. Because in this case, as Guillaume mentioned, we are first sending into the Softr database, and then triggering the workflow. So we have the inputs from both systems, like from the form itself directly, and also what has been already persisted. And that's why in this case we have a record ID here coming from database, and this is what has been inserted into the form.
Yeah, that's really convenient. At some point I needed the record ID that we just created, and we might actually use it here. So it's very convenient to have everything.
Yeah. Should I continue, or you want to take it over?
Yeah, I can take the next steps. 1 second.
Yeah, our team is consistently pushing changes, so we get this notification.
That's why, yeah. Whenever you see that little banner, it means Softr got better. Like it's real. Okay, so yeah, we had that workflow. We have the data coming in, and so we need to do a couple things. So for this workflow to be successful, we need to identify the tasks based on the transcript. So that will be an AI step to analyze this. And ideally, I would also like the AI to know who should own what task. And for that, we can, oops, no, not a branch actually. We can be adding, inside here. In Softr databases, we'll be finding multiple records from this same database in the users table. So we fetch all the data from the different users that we have. So we have our 3 people here. And because we have the name and also their record ID, we can have the AI match that with the transcript to actually understand how things happen. So I think that's all the data we have to fetch before we can use an AI step. With so I'll go for custom prompt because we want to. All right, Artur, we need some AI credit on this workspace.
Oh, okay, sure. Let me add some credits for you.
Yeah.
And while I'm doing that, maybe you can also answer here, because Thomas is asking, like, why don't we have instant triggers for table? Actually, we already have. We released that. Maybe you can share a few words about that.
Yeah. So when you're submitting a form, which is instant, the triggers are, yeah. So to initiate, to trigger a workflow, you have different sets of triggers. So you have either a recurring schedule or a webhook, or when a record of your database is being added or edited, etc. And we support that for data sources like Airtable, but also for Softr databases. And we used to have Softr database triggers, like having to wait for, let's say, 1 minute to detect the new records being added. And actually, we have just improved that, and they became instant. That was in the past couple of days or weeks. So now that is instant. Now for the other data sources, we'll have the same way of working. Then if you are using Make or Zapier, we need to poll to see if there is any change in that table, and we don't get a communication directly from these external data sources, right? So I think it's one of the benefits of having your app and your workflow the closest possible to the data sources, because like Softr is one platform, so we can make these things more instant. Cool. Yeah, happy you'll be able to build with that.
Yeah. Can you refresh and check,
yeah.
Guillaume?
Yeah. Let's check. Perfect. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you can pay me later. Yeah, that's good.
So we need this AI to return actually something very structured, because it has to identify multiple tasks. So we cannot just tell it to output a text that says, oh, here are 3 tasks, etc., because we need to really map those tasks to our other database table. So for that, we'll be using structured outputs. And maybe while I generate an example schema, Artur, can you explain very, in simple words, what is a JSON and why is it useful for such cases?
Yeah, I mean, JSON is a format to structure the data, right? So in the past, people have been using XML. HTML is another format to kind of format data, but JSON is a more modern one, and as you know, like it's used pretty much everywhere in APIs and also in AI kind of communication with AI systems. And here, obviously, AI can generate text back to us, but the text is very hard to process. So JSON is something is very structured, and we can give a schema and tell the AI to give us back in a certain format, and then we can process that format like with a higher certainty. And this is what Guillaume is going to do, just to give an example of schema, and then it will be created. So here, a quick note is that we can really give very precise schema, or we can also give an example. It still will figure out what we are on, like what we want. Doesn't have to be like very precise JSON schema provided here.
Perfect. So now is the time we write the actual AI prompt, and I'll be telling, I'll provide a meeting transcript, and based on that, you'll identify the tasks that were discussed, and be able to map them or to assign them with the right user. So I'll be providing data about users. So we need to give the list of our 3 users, and we'll do that dynamically by referring to the action we just had, where we were basically fetching all the data from our users table, and then a meeting transcript. And here I'll be with the @ icon. I'll be getting the data from. Actually, right now it was. We might have to test with an actual transcript. Right now it's just a test. If I go in there and if I go in and maybe preview it again, in the form, I had prepared a longer transcript, so I'll just copy and paste it. So as you can see, it's a full transcript. And if we go back in here, so we'll just give it a name, find or create tasks. Now the test data should be the full transcript. This one, so that's still fine. Oops, I think I didn't save the because it's already published. I didn't save it. So I'll be providing information about our users and the meeting transcript, and based on that, you'll identify all the tasks that were discussed and assign them to the right user using their user ID. Okay, so again, the information about users.
While you are typing that, another tip here could be, because like if your application has like 1,000 users, you would not like to pass this to the LLM. Alternative could be that your transcript, if it has like a names like in it or emails in it, you could also just extract those from transcript via the JSON schema again, and then use that to fetch those few like users that would be part of the meeting. As here it's a small scale, like if we have only a few users, like 10, 20 is not a big deal. So the approach that Guillaume is showing is just fine. But again, if you have like a huge list of users, then better to do that after the AI already assigned it by email or name. Like when you get the JSON output from the LLM, then you can do the find and to get the specific users back.
Yeah, I would like also right now I'm passing the whole table data with this key, but we could also have a step before to just clean this up and just keep maybe the record ID and the user name, for example, and combining these two, the AI would be in a better position. Yeah. So what is interesting here is that we actually get this this JSON like structured output instead of just a text that would say, okay, here are multiple tasks, because we need this structure to actually be able to act on that data and map it later in our workflow. And it's exactly respecting the different keys that we asked for. So we wanted the task title, when we even had a description in here, user ID, it's exactly what we got. And this is an array, so in simpler terms, it's a list of items, and here each item is a task. So we actually have a list of tasks. I can just rename this list tasks. And here it was something like get users data. So from there, because this outputs an array, we can add bulk actions. We'll basically run a loop on all of these tasks. So we'll have to select here the list of tasks. So for each task, we'll actually be creating a record in our data, in our table related to the tasks. So we can we can be creating them and assigning them. So in Softr databases, I'll be going for add record in the same database, and this time this table. And I'll be then one by one be able to map the different fields. So we had name, description. Actually, we have them all. And for the task name, we'll just call from the current item the task title. For the description, same. For the status, I think we'll just put it as to do. We could also have a version where the AI actually decides, decides the status based on what was discussed. But right now we'll keep it simple. And here we need to map the related meeting, and I'll just get that from the form based on the destination response, like record ID. So as we filled in the form, we actually created a record. So we have that data here, so we can directly map them together. And then for the user, well, we'll be using that user record ID that got generated. So yeah, I think we can call that create tasks.
Yeah, while you are doing that, I think maybe good to note that you are passing IDs here, and actually could be like you can pass other primary fields as well. For example, for user, if you have email, and we saw that like email was a primary field, if you only pass email, the system will still kind of match it. So that's a bit, you have the flexibility and use the data that you have already.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's very convenient that both the ID and the primary field value work for this kind of mapping, because sometimes you want to keep the primary field readable, because when you have a drop down in your app somewhere, you want to be able to read those. But under the hood, it's actually an ID, a unique ID that's being used. So that's what we're using right here. What we forgot to add is maybe a little, but it could be added later, mini AI step that gives actually, let's do it quickly. That gives a name to the meeting we have just created. So here, maybe just a custom prompt, less than 10 words title for the meeting. And I'll just call the transcript again.
Yeah, you can use simpler model, I guess.
Sorry? Yeah.
You can use simpler model, like you have GPT 5.5. I think that's also a good tip to really tune the models like for a given task.
Yeah, let's go for, I really like this model, Gemini 3 Flash. Here we don't need a structured output because we'll just reuse the text that's generated here. Yeah, perfect. I think that's too many words. Oh, actually, I said more than, so that's why. We can test again. So here we can call that right meeting title. Perfect. And yeah, simply in Softr databases, just updates in the task task manager, the meeting. We need to find that exact meeting. So to do that, we'll use our the record ID that we had. So not here. Oops. The record ID. And the only field we will change is actually the title, and we'll just map what the AI just outputs. We can add, I just saw that there is some bold markdown here. Title, we can say no formatting, and it should be even better. So makes it super easy to iterate on our this AI prompts. Yeah, perfect. And that should work. So I'll just update this workflow, and I think that we're done with the first step of our app. I'll just do some cleanup here just to make sure we have the right pages. So this form, let's rename it add a new meeting. Actually, don't need that. Submit. In the settings here, we can also just have a nice icon like this. And if we go back to our homepage, so just to introduce a bit the studio, the app builder, could be also changing the theme. So let's say we want something a bit more. Earlier today, I did an app that had a cool yellow, orange theme. And you could be customizing all of that. Here, let's say we can use this block to actually show our meetings instead. So we have a list of all the meetings we had. We'll call that all meetings. And here, add a meeting. We'll actually make it open the page that we had. So the form here in a model. Like this. I think we're pretty good. So now if I preview our app, we can click here, add meeting. We have our form. I paste my transcript, I give it a date. I hit submit, and we should have that loading screen. Here we actually implemented that just to like see how this feature could be. Right now, we actually didn't define what happens when this is over, but we could also totally consider running that in the background. So once this is done, we see that a new meeting appeared right here with a title. So we can also clean this block up a little bit. And maybe list the tasks here. And the transcript and the date right here. Quickly preview what we have just to put some foundations. And we see that we have multiple tasks being linked to that meeting. So I think that now is the time to build the second part of our workflow. I'll just be cleaning this up so we. Oops. Perfect. Tasks all cleaned up. As we can see, we have, this has been automatically filled, which is amazing. Now we wanted to do this other feature here that was drag and drop into a calendar. So what we need for that to put anything on the calendar, we actually need a date field in our table right here. So we can, the calendar can use that to display it at the right place. Would we need a start and an end date eventually to have it nicely organized?
Yeah.
So I'll add a date, start dates, and end dates. All right. So now is the moment we'll, I think, use our vibe coding block to have this experience. Do you have, Artur, some ideas for like things to definitely mention in the prompt, and overall some guidelines when it comes to crafting the right prompt here?
Yeah, I think there is no clear way of working with LLMs. Like you just need to be precise enough, but also not very verbose. Here, what I would do, maybe I would first just start connecting to the source and make sure that that context is at least passed. So we have here tasks that we want to show, right? And the idea is to show the tasks in one part and then the calendar in the second part, right? So that we need to mention in the prompt.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's give it a try and let's see what it creates. And usually with vibe coding is you start with something and you should not always kind of aim to one shot and rather iterate. So let's just give it a try and see what it creates, and then we can iterate and improve. I think at the end we will also need to try the update functionality, and there are multiple ways of doing it, leveraging the existing CRUD or applying the workflow, etc. We'll see. Let's just start and then.
So overall, describing the most aspects possible to leave less room for the AI to interpret what you could be possibly interested in. Should we actually, because we'll whenever we preview this app, we are actually one of the users. That's actually something we can set up. Should we then add the fact that you only see your own task, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this is what kind of differentiates also Softr vibe coding from many others, right? You can precisely define where it's getting the data and who has access to what, etc. And if you will also add actions, you can also define which type of users can perform those actions.
Yeah, so right now I just went in to configure the user sync, and I just said, okay, in my data source, if you remember, we have email, first name, and a link to tasks, which we will not use here. So I just mapped that with Softr. So in a couple seconds, it will actually sync our users with the ones we had in our data source right here. And the test user will remove it at some point. But from there, we can, when we go back into the interface, we can say, okay, only show the tasks for which the user is the logged in user email. So I will only see my tasks when I log in. And now, let's write a prompt. So I'll just say it, and it will transcribe. But we can do something like, okay, I need a calendar on the weekly view that can also switch to daily view. That would be taking a big part of the left part of that block, and on the right side, I would see all the tasks that don't have a start date and end date. So I can then drag and drop those tasks to the calendar to place them. The default amount of time is 2 hours, so you put 2 hours difference between the start time and the end time. Okay, let's give it a try. It's something we could also have planned in our database to have a field with maybe the AI could even estimate how long to dedicate to each task based on how big it seems. And that way, when you drag and drop it, it would already have the right amount of time for that task. That could be something to look at. But we can also leave it up to here, the interface to resize, meaning to change the actual timing of that that task.
Yeah, while it's working, I think Chris was asking how to create JSON schema. And I think there are multiple ways. You can also just stay within Softr and use the AI co-builder within even workflows just to ask for that, and it will be able to create one and put it to the right place. So you just need to ask for that. And you can also just provide an example, as I was mentioning, and it doesn't need to be precise schema. Example would work as well. And then, as Thomas said, you can also just use any tool, AI tool, also to create the schema.
I can show the behind the scenes. I asked that to any AI tool, and so I know that I want an array, which is this list, because that's the only way then we can iterate on that that output to create those tasks one by one. So I asked for an array, and then within this array, we need a task title, task description, user, record ID, and it's actually what it in some more complicated terms, but it basically defined these 3 items, task description, and actually even added a description and said, okay, which ones are required, etc. And by giving that to the AI, it will follow these guidelines and output this nice structured output. All right, Artur, we got it 2 times failing. I think my account is like our Softr accounts are also on the some test versions of our co-builders, so it's not the version that everyone accesses.
Yeah, let me see what's the problem with that.
Yeah, I can see if I can pull another. I mean, if it happens to not work during the live, I can also be showing another, maybe in the meantime. This is something I actually created today, another app where we basically have a vibe coding block here to import contacts to your CRM via a CSV upload. And I created that in 2 prompts, actually. I can even show both. So again, I just described everything I wanted.
Guillaume, actually, you can refresh it. I think it created it. It's just
it's there.
Yeah, it's there. Yeah.
It's there. All right. Well, then I'll keep the rest for later. All right. Amazing. We have a V1, and what I suggest is that we just try it out. So again, we didn't give many details about how it should look like in terms of in terms of layout. We gave a lot of freedom to the AI to decide, but I think it's the functionalities are there. So let's try to drag and drop this somewhere. Okay, so I think I know why. It seems like there are 2 events, because actually it's 2 hours and it didn't do a complete block. So that's interesting. Let's see if we can replay it. Yeah, we can actually move them around, but then the table is a bit is a bit broken when it's being displayed. So, and let's see the daily view. All right, I think it's a pretty good V1. And then we can change the days here and check our calendar. And let's say here, put another task. Okay. So what would you say we should ask for improvement?
Yeah, maybe like clicking on it can show some details. I'm not sure if it's doing something at the moment.
No, it's only waiting for me to drag and drop.
Yeah. While you are doing that, there were a couple of questions. So in terms of models for this particular use case, it's Anthropic's models. So it's Opus, I would say. We do use either OpenAI or Anthropic for many of those internal use cases. And for this particular use case, it's Anthropic's models. And then are you planning to add planning mode? Yes, we have a lot of ideas of what to add and how to improve, and planning is one of those. And it will just get better. It's just still early version of my coding block. It does an amazing job, but there's a ton of functionalities we plan to add on it.
Okay, thanks for those answers. I was saying, when an event is 2 hours, it shows up as 2 different blocks, whereas it should be one united block. And the grid gets a bit broken when there are events on that day, because it gets wider. So maybe you can fix that.
Yeah, maybe another tip. Or you're still recording, or?
No, actually, it's a DIY recorder, and it didn't work that time.
So my tip would be maybe to try to solve one problem at a time. So we also do that in engineering. So like if you will ask now 2 to 3 things, it might do, but like, if you go like more atomic, like first fix, like, I don't know, maybe the block so that it's connected, and then the other one, or up to you. So I generally recommend to go with small incremental steps.
Yeah. Sorry. So while it does some edits, I am preparing my next shot. So instead of one and the grid looks a bit broken. All right, so now we should have the like editable aspect. Oops. Sorry. So when there is an event on a specific day, then the width of the grid increases, which doesn't match the header grid. So maybe find a better way to display those. And I'll just launch a preview to check the current version that we had. So that's really cool. So I can here manually edit the description, change the status, change the start date. Let's see if I remove 1 hour, it will then probably show up as one single block. That's perfect. And the rest didn't change because I just sent the prompt now. What we can also check is in content. Can you explain? So how does it work? We have different versions of the block here. Artur, can you explain what's under the hood and how to use it?
Yeah, definitely. Like every change is modifying the code, and we are saving every change. Because sometimes you might want to go back, or sometimes the LLM might produce the result that you don't like. So this gives you full version control. So you can go back and then continue like from the day before, or like a couple of hours before, and just iterate on top of previous versions. And that gives a lot of flexibility and a very cool feature. And we have all these versions of codes pretty much persisted, and that's how we do it.
That's very useful. So, I mean, if someone can code, they can also manually edit the code, right? And then they can save what they have done. It will save a new version, so you can always go back to maybe if you tried something out that didn't work out, or you can also duplicate it, and that's very convenient. And also in the Actions tab, we can, for now, see the actual actions that are activated, and even tell which user group should have access to that.
Yeah, that's super powerful part, right? So that you can see the actions and define who can act on them. It gives a lot of visibility. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I mean I was just checking the new layout here. It seems like we have improved the grid layout. If we go for days. That's pretty solid.
Maybe while we're on those, like a few quick tips or things that are coming soon on the Vibe Coding blog. One thing that is there, but we are still not announcing and need a bit of UX improvement, is that you can upload an image. Let's say if you have a calendar in mind, you have somewhere and you want to replicate that, you can take a screenshot and then upload that image, and then it will create the clone of that one, as close as it can, right? So that already works. It's not like advertised, but you can already try it, and it will create whatever you give as an input in terms of image.
And is it also working to ask for improvements? For example, here, if I send this screenshots and I explain what's not working the way I want, will it?
Yeah, I think it could, but I would now, if you're trying, I would try it on a new block or a duplicate of that. So just to be on the safer side, because it will kind of get from the image and generate new maybe controls and so on, and you don't want your working version maybe to be affected by another version. So it's usually good for a good kind of quick start, and then so for new block, I would suggest if you have an idea, start with that. And the second thing that's going to come soon is you will be able to update some of the text changes directly without necessarily reprompting it. So if you need to change the title of the blog or more like textual things that you need to change, you don't need to consume credits or regenerate it. You can
it also takes
just
time,
say,
so it's good when there are controls that are instant, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I like that. Okay, I think we have. I mean, it's a very early version, but like we can imagine that we would have an app with all our meetings. We can add a new meeting the following way. You paste your transcript that you get from your meeting tool. When you add them, we see that here a record got added, and it will generate the related tasks in the background, and also give a name automatically to that meeting. And from there, you get all your tasks assigned to you. So that will reload with already the tasks, and the title will come. And then you go right there, you go into tasks, you have your calendar loading, and you're able to drag and drop those tasks into your own agenda, and even change those elements. You can go further. I mean, I don't know what next steps you would see, Artur, to bring this up to another level.
Yeah. So what I would do as a next is, obviously we don't want manually to copy paste the transcripts, right? So whatever tool is recording your meetings and transcribing, so I would connect that to the workflows, and then it will be more or less like autopilot, right? So you do a meeting, and then you have everything created for you, and you can even get Slack messages whenever there are tasks assigned to you, and what you need to do is put into the calendar.
So when you start a workflow with a webhook, that becomes a URL that's almost like a phone number that you can give to your meeting recorder app if they're able to send webhooks and send the transcript via API. And then when we receive it, we would add an action to add actually that meeting. So instead or in addition to the manual form, because sometimes, I mean, if that tool didn't work to send that webhook or whatever happened, it's also good to have that manual button in your app. Sounds good. Perfect. Was there any additional question? I think we can wrap it up on that use case. Maybe in terms of building philosophy using the vibe coding block inside Softr, do you want to like discuss that, Artur? Like, when is a good time to use vibe coding block versus the native blocks?
Very tough question and a good one. I think it's about the balance, right? So if you want like a scalable table, and you don't need a lot of customizations, then you could stick to Softr tables, because that's a bit battle tested and a lot of people are using it. There's a lot of UX considerations done there, so you get a lot from the get-go. However, if you really need something custom, you want to go beyond what's the existing blocks offering you, then you can build your own. That comes with a cost, right? So that means you need to iterate it. It will not get every feature like out of the gate, and you will get the first version. And then every new version that you need to change, you need to be careful and test it, etc. Yeah. So that's the kind of trade-off that you need to take into account.
I would say for business apps, 90% of the app doesn't need to reinvent new layouts, new blocks. Like you need forms, you need tables, you need charts, you need a Kanban, maybe a calendar, etc. If you need something extra custom, like here we wanted to drag and drop our events on the calendar, resize them, etc., then you can go for the vibe coding block. If you want audio capture, if you want these kinds of advanced UI. I released right before this live a YouTube video about, and that you can check out, how to create a CSV import to bulk create records in your app via a nice CSV import interface. That's happening with the vibe coding block, which really expands what's possible with Softr, but you stay in this reliable and solid and secure no-code infrastructure, right, where the users management is provided out of the box and secure, permissions, etc.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is like our vibe code blog is also very secure, right? Because the data layer comes with the same data layer. So you still connect the data source, you still add the conditional filter, you still add the action button visibility. So in that terms, those are shared kind of bits. So it's the same how it works for a vibe coding blog, also the same how it works for other blogs. So I think the real differentiation here is like if you really want customization in terms of UI, and obviously Softr has been balancing, not giving every possibility on the existing blocks, on the standard blocks, let's call them like this, because otherwise it will be too overwhelming if you want to control everything. And the vibe coding on that terms is good because you just text and then it builds for it. I think the boundaries between those two kind of will get closer over time. What we're also thinking is if you start even with like a normal block, you can over time you can convert it to the vibe block. Maybe the other way around as well over time, but I think the likelihood of converting from the standard one to vibe is more likely, and I think that's the future we are planning over time. So I would say, like, look at it and see what you want. If you really need customization, go for Vibe 1. We don't mind if you use the Vibe coding one. So that's one of our favorite blogs, and we are pushing it forward. So just use it, share your feedback. There are two other questions that I'd like to, Guillaume, if fine with you, I would like to quickly mention. There is a question about webhook should always be OAuth key protectable. That's a feature we are considering actually. So especially if it's within Softr applications, we can actually make it so that only logged in users can trigger this webhook. Like, it can be triggered from the parts of the system where the user is authenticated. However, that should be optional. So it can't be enforced. There will be an option for you to control it, because sometimes it's in Softr application and you have the user context. Sometimes it will be from external system, and there you might not necessarily have that, secure context and so on. Long story short, we will give that option so you can configure it to be more secure.
And to conclude on what you were telling about how Softr doesn't allow for a lot of like customizing all the aspects of the native blocks. It's actually for a very good reason that you mentioned, is that the padding, the responsive on mobile is already perfectly nailed out of the box. But I actually find that the vibe coding block also respects quite well those design guidelines, and that has been tested for and improved for months, so that it also applies your app's theme natively. So we saw that our task calendar was actually using this yellow, etc. And if we were to change it to blue, it would also change. So it's also quite connected to the design rules of Softr overall. But if you want to push the boundaries, you will be able to. But it doesn't mean that whenever you use a vibe coding block, it will look very different than the rest of the app. No, it will actually be very well integrated into the app, so the blocks work well together.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. I think we can wrap things here. If you want a final word, Artur, it's yours.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining, and thank you, Guillaume, for the nice show. And we hope to make this repeating pattern. So every second week or so, we might try to show up and build something very interesting together.
Yes, and we'll try to bring some other team members. So we'll be able to show all aspects and also the people behind building this platform. So thank you so much for tuning in, and see you soon.
Thank you, everyone. See you.